Okay, we are currently in our history lesson for March 31st. This is your Tuesday lesson, and we are on lesson 56, the Holocaust. So remember to write down your title in your history lesson, the Holocaust. We're going to be looking at it from afar today. And the date is 1933 to 1945. Just make sure you write that down in your notes and then follow along as I read or take notes as you would like. From a wide angle view or close up, there is no easy way to look at the Holocaust. The Holocaust, by broad definition, was the mass extermination of 11 to 17 million people under Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime. Gruesome black and white photos taken from afar give us a shocking and staggering view of the event. Large piles of emaciated corpses verify the fact that hundreds and thousands died at a time in systematic fashion. Close-up photographs tell us a different story. They remind us that these millions of victims were real people, with friends, families, hopes, and dreams. To absorb the magnitude of the Holocaust, we will use this lesson to look at the Holocaust from afar and the enormous numbers of those who perished. We will use our next lesson to look at 4 individual Holocaust victims. Of the of the 11 to 17 million who died under the dark shadow of the Third Reich, the breakdown is as follows. 6 million of these people were Jews. This was by far the largest group targeted for mass destruction. 2 to 3 million were Soviet prisoners of war that were captured during World War II. 2 million were Poles or Polish people. 500,000 were Romani or Gypsies. 250,000 or more were Germans suffering physical or emotional disability. 80,000 were Freemasons. 25,000 were Slavs. 15,000 were homosexuals. 5,000 were Jehovah's Witnesses. Untold numbers were communists, members of the Confessing Church, a Protestant branch of German who opposed the Nazis, or other enemy of the Nazi Party. Within these groups, at least 1.5 million were children, tragically caught up in this evil plot. As you can see by this wide range of victims, Hitler had a fixation for self-preservation. He was clearly an anti-Semite, which is a person who discriminates against or is hostile towards Jews. In addition, Hitler targeted for destruction any group he considered a threat to Germany, including Germans. How did one man execute millions? Well, he didn't do it alone, nor did he publicly kill with his own bare hands. Hitler orchestrated mass annihilation with the help of Heinrich Himmler, a commander deeply involved in the occult. The SS, the Gestapo, angered citizens, Nazi loyalists, gas chamber engineers, and those who turned their heads the other way. As mentioned in another lesson, Hitler started the Third Reich using outwardly peaceful means. He was legally appointed both chancellor and president, but behind the scenes, he used Machiavellian-style force. This force escalated beyond the comprehension of all of us. Hitler built his first concentration camp in March of 1933, shortly after his appointment as chancellor. The camp was named Dachau. The purpose of this camp was to house 5,000 of Hitler's political opponents. He had so many that it was difficult and costly in bullets to shoot them all. These enslaved enemies of the state served also to provide labor to the Nazis, but due to poor conditions, exhaustion, and starvation, the survival rate of a Dachau prisoner was only 50%. As Hitler's career flourished, at least 16,000 more concentration camps were built in Nazi territory under Heinrich Himmler to house the Führer's growing number of targets and enemies. The survival rate varied from camp to camp depending on food rations, the unstoppable spread of disease, and the temperament of the Nazi guards. Within the camps, prisoners were ever reminded of prejudice against them by the assignment of a colored badge on their sleeves or garments. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses were decorated with purple triangle badges. Communists wore red triangles, homosexuals pink, Romani or gypsies black, common criminals green, and Jews yellow. The guards at Auschwitz, the largest Nazi concentration camp, resorted to tattooing their prisoners for identification on the left side of the chest or forearm. Of course, the yellow badge given specifically to the Jews started before the concentration camps filled. Under Hitler, Jews were forced to wear yellow stars of David in the ghettos of Poland after German invasion in 1939, on the streets of Germany in 1941, and in other Nazi territories while persecution grew against them. And here is the star he was talking about. This is the Star of David, and it was popular among the Jews during the Middle Ages as a sacred symbol of their faith, but he used it as a symbol to discriminate them, okay, and make them wear it. I don't have words to describe the life of the Nazi concentration camps. Inmates were literally and often intentionally worked to death. Prisoners were starved, deprived, cramped, and humiliated. Prisoners who failed at their labor were shot. Prisoners who tried to escape were shot. If prisoners rebelled, they were shot. There were uprisings, but all were harshly squelched. There were few successful escapes, but the world could hardly believe the stories coming out of the concentration camps. They were inconceivable. One of many horrifying stories coming from the camps was the work being done by the Nazis in the name of medical experimentation. Nazi physicians used concentration camp prisoners to run ludicrous tests on the limits of the human body. Besides that, they practiced techniques for sterilizing women. They were interested in stopping reproduction in their enemies for sake of purifying the German race. I know that this story is difficult, but tragically, it gets worse. You see, in 1942, 9 years into the Third Reich, Hitler allowed Heinrich Himmler to begin the construction of extermination camps, all of them in Nazi-occupied Poland. This is when the nightmare of the Holocaust peaked. I say that because these extermination camps were designed exclusively to kill mass numbers of people at one time, usually within hours of the victim's arrival. Apparently, bullets were too prized a possession during World War II for the Nazis to use them on their prisoners. They resorted to the invention of other means of execution and deemed mass murder the final solution to the Jewish problem. The final solution was a code word for death used by Hitler as early as 1935. Under Himmler, there were 6 extermination camps built in Nazi-occupied Poland. 4 were commanded by Austrians. Some were attached to concentration camps, some were not. The names of these death camps were Auschwitz II, Kimlo, Belzec, Majdanek, Sobibor, and Treblinka. The largest and worst of these was Auschwitz II, where at least 1.1 million were intentionally murdered. Auschwitz II was an extension of Auschwitz I, the large concentration camp mentioned previously. The main groups on Hitler's hate list were Jews and Gypsies. Therefore, they were the ones sent to the extermination camps by trainloads. I think you probably already know the most common method used for this. It was the gas chamber. Unsuspecting prisoners, 2,000 at a time, were stripped, handed a bar of soap, and herded into one large chamber room under the impression that they were being given a disinfecting shower. Sometimes an orchestra played to calm the nerves of the inmates. Signs over the chamber read bath and sauna to soothe the fear of the unknown. But water was never to come. Gas was dropped into the chamber instead, killing everyone in the room within 15 to 20 minutes. Following the fatal act, other Jewish prisoners were forced at gunpoint to collect the gold fillings from the victims' teeth and dispose of the bodies in a crematorium or furnace before the next group entered. The Holocaust provoked such difficult emotions that even the name of this tragedy has become a delicate matter. Because the word Holocaust means burnt sacrifice, from the Greek word holocauston, many Jews prefer to call the Holocaust the Shoah, which means calamity in Hebrew. Furthermore, you know that while some define the Holocaust solely as the extermination of 6 million European Jews, others like myself use the term to describe the entire group of 11 to 17 million that perished under the Nazis. In any case, using the term Holocaust requires some sensitivity and clarification because no group wishes their victims to be forgotten or minimized. In fact, because the term Holocaust is so powerful, it has been borrowed in modern times to describe other genocides in history, such as the Armenian Holocaust, the Bosnian Holocaust, and the Sudan Holocaust. However you choose to define the Holocaust, I've not yet touched on why it happened. I'm not sure that any historian can adequately explain the madness of it, but we have a few clues as to what fueled the wicked side of Nazi ideology. Before the Nazi Party was up and running, there existed a German secret society with some very dark and strange ideas. It was the Thule, or sometimes pronounced the Thule Society. It was founded in 1918. Members of the inner circle were Satanists who practiced black magic. Among many questionable rituals, they believed their duty was the preservation of the Aryan race. I hesitate to define the Aryan race because the very concept is steeped in evolution, Nordic mythology, and the cultic ideas of Helena Blavatsky, a Russian spiritualist influenced by Eastern religions. Regardless of the bizarre mesh of ideas, members of the Thule Society believed that Germans of Nordic stock were the highest examples of the Aryan race. Semites, Jews, were considered by the Thule Society to be a lesser offshoot, both spiritually and physically, and thus classified as non-Aryans. Some Germans so elevated the Aryan race that they deemed any people animals and treated them as such. Tying into this, our present lesson, Anton Drexler, the founder of the German Workers' Party, which later became the Nazi Party, was a supposed member of the Thule Society. He merged the warped satanic ideas of one group with the strong nationalistic ideas of the other. The connection to the extermination camps is blatant and terrifying. Nazis influenced the Thule Society as well as a host of other societies. Believed they were speeding up the course of natural selection by eliminating those deemed weak, animal-like, or inferior to the Aryan race. To them, it was a noble cause. There's more to this. According to Dietrich Eckart, the spiritual leader of the Thule Society, Hitler was the embodiment of their desire for a world leader. Eckart called Hitler the German Messiah, the Great One, and the Antichrist. It was Dietrich Eckart, a professed occultist, who mentioned Adolf Hitler in his early career. Of great significance, he groomed Hitler to become a more mesmerizing speaker. Because of Hitler's association with Eckhart and his dabbling with the occult, many would surmise that Hitler was demon-possessed. Hitler's legacy of death and destruction against mankind would cause many to wonder. Some who outright believed that Hitler was demonically influenced included Satanist Alice Bailey, Hitler's friend August Kubizek, his biographer Alan Bullock, and the author Erwin Lutzer. Debate will always exist over Hitler's connection to the occult because as the Nazi Party grew, Hitler denied his associations or kept them well hidden. In fact, Hitler covered much of his evil agenda by using Christian jargon. Though he sought to destroy Christianity, he used religion when it was convenient and boasted that it was God's will that the Aryans survive. Generally, he portrayed Christ as a non-Jew and our greatest Aryan hero. It is difficult for me to even speak of these things. As a contradiction to his Christian facade, Hitler was strongly influenced by the teachings of Friedrich Nietzsche, who taught that God is dead. This was previously discussed in Lesson 51. Hitler was also influenced by the music of German composer Richard Wagner, who was very anti-Semitic, and the teachings of George Hegel, who believed that the state was supreme and war was necessary to purify mankind. I've dumped a lot of really sad, depressing information on you today that's really, really difficult to understand. I realize this, but I have one last topic to address, and that is how Hitler masterfully spread his twisted ideas. This is important to learn from history, lest mankind ever be so misled. When Hitler established himself as the Führer, his empire quickly took control of the courts, the media, the church, and education. In fact, a special right cabinet was created to coordinate the takeover of all German culture through film, literature, music, art, radio, and the press. The culture cabinet was highly successful, to say the least. Hail Hitler was on the lips of everyone in Germany. Churches were coerced to sign the statements of loyalty to Hitler, and schools were infiltrated with the German youth movement. A club designed to teach Nazi thought to children ages 10 to 14. It was many of the brainwashed children of the German youth movement who grew up to defend National Socialism even with their lives in World War II. Back to the spread of Nazi thought. Outwardly, the Third Reich would appear to support private industry. For this reason, German businessmen gravitated rather naively into the hands of the Nazi Party. Like Mussolini's growing party in Italy, the Third Reich would be labeled a fascist regime. In reality, all business was highly regulated, but Hitler hated communism and would not allow his regime to be labeled as such. He had no interest in Karl Marx's steps towards statelessness. Hitler, as an egomaniac, believed his totalitarian regime would be different from that of all other dictators. He was sure to outshine Mussolini, and that he alone could restore Germany to the glory it knew before the Great War. Hitler made no secret of his threefold agenda. He was pro-Germany, anti-communist, and anti-Semitic. Others held to these campaigns, but none pulled them together like Hitler did. To bring the Germans along, his oppression started slowly in 1933 with the boycott of Jewish stores, the exclusion of Jews from universities. It grew to be the burning of books written by Jews and the prohibition of Jews from the newspaper industry. By 1935, Jews were denied the right to vote or hold office and were forbidden to intermarry with Germans. In 1938, during the Night of Broken Glass, synagogues, Jewish businesses, and homes were destroyed out of spite and hatred. As previously mentioned, it was in 1939 that Germany invaded Poland and began to identify the Jewish-Polish population with yellow stars in 1941. The stars were issued to Jews in Germany. Eventually, Jews in Poland, Germany, and other Nazi territories were stripped of their homes and valuables and forced into ghettos. Remember, one of Hitler's reasons for despising the Jews was the economic prosperity of the merchant class. To punish them, he literally took away their possessions and handed them out to the Germans. As you can imagine, ghetto living created its own set of problems, and so mass deportation started. Jews were sent first to the concentration camps. That led to the extermination camps built in 1942, which I painfully described earlier. In summary, the Germans, as well as the Austrians and Romanians, by and large, fell for Hitler's tainted ideology. They were duped by all of Hitler's propaganda. Many good, well-meaning citizens bought into the Nazi promise to rebuild a German empire. Did they know that 5 to 11 million non-Jews were going to be worked to death or shot? No, most did not. Did they know that 6 million out of 9 million Jews in Europe were going to die from starvation, exhaustion, or gas? No, most did not. The gas chambers were not constructed until 9 years into the Third Reich. The annihilation of 2/3 of Europe's Jews started slowly, and much of it happened without the average European having a vote in the matter. The only good news to end this story is that the fact that Hitler was stopped. I'm saving this story for another lesson. It would take World War II to stop him, but it did happen. With the end of Hitler came the end of the Holocaust. In 1945, during the final months of World War II, all those left behind in scattered concentration camps and extermination camps were liberated. We will see more of that dramatic story when we study World War II. And that is the end of this lesson. And please hear me that is a very hard lesson to hear. It's probably one of the hardest history lessons we'll ever discuss. But it's true. And we know that we need to know history because we need to know how to be to go against it, how to see these things coming, how to know what truth is. And so I just ask that if you're upset by it or worried about it, that you be sure to discuss it with your parents.